I have to restore this window. It's called a transom window. I wonder if that's because the back end of square riggers had fancy windows in them. The back end was called a transom. As you can see, it's in pretty bad shape. The rats with fat tails, known as squirrels, have had their way with it. For a lot of years. I found some pretty nice straight grain cedar. It's very clear. Should work good. As you can see, I've already started to mill it. These big pieces here, cut in half again, will be the stiles and the rails, and the smaller pieces will be the mullions and anything else I need. Okay, I've just finished cutting those pieces apart into rails. And stiles. Now I've used the dado blade to mill a land for the lights or the glass in all four pieces. Now I'm setting up to cut the reveal, and I've added a sacrificial fence. And I'll put the hold down on that. My hold down feather board. The feather board isn't wide enough to catch the rails of the stiles. What I did was to make a bench hook. And the bench hook adds width and will catch the rails and the stiles. Feather board. This bench hook can't go that way. And that should work. That should hold it down and over. Okay, glass goes there, and that's the reveal for the other side. That'll be the inside, and that'll be the outside. All milled. Look pretty good. Okay. That's a lot closer than they were. I think that'll work. So I upgraded my miter gauge quite a bit to give me leverage to push the long pieces of stock across the blade. Then I realized no matter what I did, there was nothing that was going to keep these things straight short of clamping them. So I came up with two clamping blocks. That just fit around these pieces of stock. And with this clamp, I can just get it in there to get a hold on it. I'll use two hands to do it. But once it's clamped, and that brought up another issue. The miter gauge is a little loose in the slot. So I came up with these shims to put in it to keep it from doing that. That's looking pretty good. Oh, here we are with a transom window kit. All the pieces are cut. And we came inside because at 29 degrees it's too cold to use epoxy. Here's the rails. These are the mullions. The mullions are in two pieces. These are the stiles. And these are the spacers for the windows. The mullions are made up of two pieces. This little narrow divider and these wider lands for the glass. When they're put together, they'll be like this. But the little pieces have to go on first and get glued, and then these lands for the glass get put on after. We start by putting all the dividers in with a spacer in each slot. Just loose. This ensures that the two rails are perfectly aligned. You might notice I've numbered these because I've already tried them out. I also notice they're a little overlong. I'll cut them off later. Once I get it clamped up, I make sure that all of these things are still loose, which means the two rails are still aligned and not binding up. And they are. Also, you notice these are just a little proud of the surface, so I can take them down once they're glued. If they're glued, I'll flip the whole thing over and glue on these things on the bottom. 6 of them. I think you can see. And before I did that, I masked them off everywhere but where the glue goes, in hopes of having an easier cleanup. These 6 aren't perfect. As you can see, there's a little gap yet in them. And so what I'm going to do is, when I glue the next 6, I'm going to come back and daub just a little more glue epoxy on these, hopefully sealing them up. So I'm going to try that now. It's been about 2 hours since these are glued. So those are all glued. And I was able to get the masking tape off one of these. It looks pretty clean. See how the rest of the masking tape comes off tomorrow. Okay, masking tape and epoxy. When I glued these in, I put masking tape on this surface. That really isn't necessary because once you go back and sand it or plane it or both, you can take any excess epoxy off very easily. It's the inside corners you have to be careful of. These things. If you get a big glop of epoxy in there and don't remove it, then when you try to put the glass in this place, they won't sit down flat. So using the masking tape in these corners was a good idea. And so I've repeated it here. I'm going to have to take these apart for the stiles, glue them, and then push them back together. So I have actually cut along the parting lines the masking tape so it'll come apart and then go back together. And I have to do the same thing underneath here, because again, that's an inside corner, and a big glop of epoxy in there wouldn't look good either. And you can't sand it out very well. Yeah, I can remove them using a little Bondo blade like these that I've cut up. And you could go back and remove the epoxy after you've glued it like this. And that works okay, except we're planning on leaving this cedar natural, and then you'd have little shiny spots everywhere the epoxy was. Even though it wasn't a thick glop, there'd be little shiny spots. So removing it doesn't remove it completely, and that won't really work. So I'm doing all the inside corners. Not too hard. Dog tape, by the way, is a little better than masking tape. It's a little stronger, and the adhesive is a little more like duct tape than standard masking tape. So it isn't too tough to do. Can even squeegee the excess off with a little piece of Pondo blade, and you can get the glop out of the corners. Just finished gluing up the first 6 of these second half of the mullions this morning. This provides the land for the glass. Couple more sessions of these and all the gluing will be done. Opportunity to use the excess epoxy to glue up a couple of sanding blocks. Not bad. So there we have all glazed. Well, there it is. Looked good to me. I'll be long gone before it falls.